Hey guys, today we got a fun episode. Today we are going to be talking about the top 10 cars that I shouldn't like, but I do. Okay? You're going to catch me looking off just in my tablet over here. And then I got all my notes in there and the composite list in the proper order. So we're going to be going through. Now, the main thing to understand is what constitutes why I shouldn't like a car, or why I should say why I normally wouldn't like a car. Typically, it's because there are certain brands I don't like, okay? So between the brands, usually when I'm looking for vehicles, when I'm going out to purchase a vehicle, the other things that I'm looking at beyond a certain brand is I'm looking at the performance of the vehicle as well as the design or the styling. So typically, if I'm not being grabbed by those certain things, now it's not just that. There are going to be other things too. But those are usually the biggest factors that are kind of, all right, if I don't like the brand and, I'm not a fan of the performance of the design, it's kind of a written off to me. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of just setting the bar. So now let's just jump on in and start off, okay? The first one on here, number 10, it's the new SUV, is the Genesis GV80. Now, there's been a lot of hype, a lot of articles and reading material on this vehicle. This is their mid-size SUV. It seems to be. I've read articles that go in two different directions with the vehicle, where they compare it to the Hyundai Palisade, which to me that doesn't really make too much sense because the Palisade is a bigger vehicle and that is within their own stable of vehicles. But I've also read where they try to direct it towards the Acura RDX. Now, Genesis being that they are trying to crack hard into the luxury market, I can see that. Personally, I don't necessarily agree. I think it's a bit of a stretch. I have an MDX myself, and I know that I have that Acura background and history. But again, it's not about this comparing head to head. In terms of, I just like the vehicle. It's got a sharp design. The options on the vehicle are pretty good. The power is good. The power is there. Specifically with this vehicle, though, the design is sharp on it. Pretty much all the Genesises are good. Specifically this one. There's nothing negative on the vehicle yet. It's too new. So that's going to be something we'll have to look at down the road. But yeah, the Genesis GV80. Right there, and pretty soon they have another one coming down the road. Number 9 on this list is a little bit of a shocker to some people, but there's reasons there. Number 9 is going to be the Acura RDX. Now, again, like I said, I have a sales background. My wife, she has an Acura RDX. My mom in the past, she's had a CRV, which is in that family. Point being is the RDXs, they've typically there's just always been something about them where I feel like I've been tight and I haven't fit right in the vehicle, and it's just the design is, oh, it looks good, it's nice, but it's just it wasn't my cup of tea. It wasn't for me. The new one, the current one, the RDX, I would have no problem saying that that's probably the best car in that class, in being the luxury compact SUV class. I drove one a while back when I had first got my truck. I had an RDX, the new one, for about 3 days, and I drove the hell out of that. You've got the small 4-cylinder turbo in there, which it's not that bad. It's 272 horsepower. Between that and the automatic or the 10-speed transmission, the car boogies. The inside, it's definitely contoured to you, so it feels like you're driving a sports car, almost like when I had my old G37. It's very responsive and fun to drive. You don't really know that you're driving an SUV, specifically a compact one with a shorter wheelbase, which makes it a lot of fun. So that's one that's actually a shocker, despite the fact I am an Acura person. Number 8 on here. Now this is where we're going to get into it with about, this is a true shocker here, is the Toyota CHR. Now the specific reason of Toyota itself, I'm going to touch base further down the video. just because it's a more wider spectrum in terms of the point being. But yeah, I don't understand typically the segment of why the manufacturers want to go with this subcompact SUV crossover all-wheel drive hatchback. I don't know what this class is that they're doing, but it's probably the best looking car in the class. It's fun, it's unique, it's different. I like it. Every time I see it, I always turn off and look at it. It catches my eye. I'd probably say it's the best looking car in its class. The only other one that might compete with the vehicle in terms of looks would be the Mazda CX-3. And even then, the CX-3, it just kind of looks like a Mazda 3 with a higher ride height and all-wheel drive. That's kind of all that vehicle looks like. But yeah, no, it's a fun car. And I would say maybe it's a little underpowered. You know what I mean? It's only got about 144 horsepower. I think they should probably have a little bit more out of that, but that's not the point. It's a fun-looking vehicle. I don't know if I should call it an SUV, a hatchback, or what, but it looks like definitely something that I'd be curious to kind of go for a ride and spend some time in it. Number 7. Oh, for a long time, I didn't like this vehicle. I couldn't stand this vehicle. Now it's cracked into, I really like that vehicle. The Ford Mustang. Now, I grew up, I'm an 80s baby, so you figure in the 90s, you know, you saw a lot of those, and, you know, finally, once we're, 17, 18 years old, getting some of the older used Mustangs, the Mustang was a Me Too car. You know, Me Too is basically in the sense that, oh, I have a Mustang. Really, Me Too. Everybody had one. You had that and the Civic. Those were two of the biggest cars that you turn around, you're always going to see. You could probably be like 5 to 10 every day. It was very easy. You still see a lot of them now. Not as much, but they are, in terms of the 3 muscle cars, this is by far the best looking one. The price point's good. The color selection of the vehicle is fun. I like that, what's that blue called on here? The Velocity Blue. I think of it kind of like an electric blue. It's a fun color. I really enjoy it. I drove one out in Vegas when we had one. We had a convertible. That was fun. But yeah, it's a good vehicle. It's a fun vehicle. The entry level performance, it's not underpowered where you're almost in a situation you have to upgrade. At 310 horsepower in the base car, that's good. We've always said that, if we ever decided that we wanted to get like a fun car or an extra car, I've actually said I'd consider being okay with that car because it's fun to drive and it's a good looking car. So that's number 7 on here. Number 6 is a little contradictory for me, but it is what it is. Number 6 is Mini. And I'm not saying a specific Mini, but I'm saying the brand in general, okay? Now, the reason I'm saying the brand in general is because I am a bigger guy, and all of the Mini cars are on the smaller side. So whether we're talking about the Mini Cooper, the Countryman, the Clubman, they're all going to be relatively small. Now, can I fit in them? Yes. Yes, I can. That's kind of like the only, the hard part of why I shouldn't like it, just because it is smaller. But they're small. They're small, so they handle good. The performance is good in regards to how they handle because they're light. Even though they don't have super big engines, again, because they are light, the performance kind of counters that, so it is good. These vehicles, I would almost kind of say they're an entry-level midlife crisis car. Now, what I mean by that is if you think about it, if you get the 2-door Mini Cooper, right? It's a fun little coupe, okay? You have the 4-door, which I don't really see too many of those on there. You know what I mean? So they're more of a city car for that, depending on, who you are. For the Clubman, you know what I mean? And the Countryman, for those vehicles, if you're a bachelor, if you go away for weekends, if you have a dog, you do adventures, biking, all of those definitely be the bigger cars. You can fit friends, go away. You can do all sorts of stuff with those and have a good time with them, and yet keep a small, compelled life for it to be universal. So they got a lot of good stuff with the minis. Yeah, yeah, they're good there. We're gonna move on to number 5. Number 5, for a while, I really resisted. I couldn't bring myself around to like it because of the concept of it. Now we're talking about the Kia Stinger, okay? The concept of the vehicle when it came out, when it was being marketed, was it's going to be the BMW killer. That was kind of the vehicle that they were gearing it at, and I don't know why manufacturers focus on something like that. Like when you're coming out with a new car, just boom, going right after BMW, instead of focusing on having a successful car that's new to your lineup and just kind of go, abroad with it after many manufacturers. But that was the big turnoff for me because a lot of people like BMW. Not me. A lot of people like BMW, so that's all you're doing by doing that is that's how you're trying to catch the read to say a Kia is a BMW killer. But the car does have good styling. The car looks good. Whether you get, there's pretty much 2 models. You're either going to get the base car or the GT. Now they have a GT and a GT Plus, which essentially it's the same thing. So, but regardless of which one you're looking at getting, the styling of the vehicle is good. Now, if you go up to the GT, there's maintenance concerns there that I have to think about in regards to the tires and the brakes. That's a whole nother episode, but that's on the backside. But the car looks good, fun to drive, performance, styling, it's all there. So that is number 5 on this list for me. The only thing I could say is that I've never had a chance to drive one, but based on the specs and the initial reading, it seems to be a solid car. Number 4 on here, going in a completely different direction. Number 4 is we've got the Toyota Corolla. Another Toyota, yes. Now again, in this sense, I get it. It's a compact car. Compact car, generally nothing in terms of crazy in terms of performance. Styling, they still look good because that's basically your entry-level car when you're looking to get into something, whether it's for someone young, someone doesn't need anything crazy, living in a city, good fuel economy, whatever the case may be. Now, in this case with the Corolla, it's one in this class, in the compact class. This, the Sentra, and the Mazda 3 are probably the best 3 looking cars in this class. The Corolla, I'd say it's probably in there at number 2, could fight for number 3, but it's definitely right there. The performance, standard engine's 139 horsepower. You can upgrade it to the sport model, which is called the Apex, at 169. So that if you upgrade to the sport model, that puts it second in its class in terms of power. But that's kind of irrelevant. That's just based on person to person. So that's that. It's mainly about the design, though, for me with this vehicle. And now we're going to go to number 3. Again, Toyota, and this is going to be a Toyota Camry. Now, this is the 3rd Toyota. Now, going back and touching on the CHR, the Corolla, and the Camry, what is it about these cars that you shouldn't like, but you do? I worked at Toyota way back years ago, during the time when they had that whole issue about the brakes failing and not working and stuff like that. That happened to me once when I was working there at the dealer. And it was just kind of something that was just written off, and because we didn't really suspect anything with it. And then it was about 2 or 3 weeks later, that's when the whole thing came out about all the recalls on all the cars. That's a huge safety thing. So for the longest time, and you figure, I want to say that was back around 2010, I think it was. For the longest time, I've just basically written off Toyota. I'm just at the point now where I'm starting to come around on these cars. The reliability is still there. They haven't really had any super crazy recalls. The styling on these cars has finally caught up. Now, I'm going to talk specifically on, well, even on all these cars in general. The CHR, that was, like I said, about the performance there and the design. The Corolla, I just said with the design, and the Camry here too. For the longest times, Toyotas were just, they were just kind of boring vehicles. They weren't sporty, they weren't fancy, they were just building cars. You know what I mean? Finally, they've gotten to the point where they're building nice looking, solid cars. And it's at the point where they're catching my attention. And even now with the Camry, the standard car is 203 horsepower. And you can upgrade to the V6, which is just a touch over 300 horsepower, which is a good amount of performance. Back then, the 4-cylinder was like 205, and the V6 I think was like 240. So they really, or no, not 240. Yeah, maybe something like that, 230, 240. So they've really come a long way in both aspects. I still don't know if I'd necessarily look to purchase one, but I think I look more and have it on the list and say, okay, am I going to wind up getting it or not? But it's in the conversation. So that's where I'm at with the Toyotas. Number 2 on the list is going to be the Tesla Model S. Now, typically I'm not a person that is a fan of the niche cars. Now, what I mean by the niche cars is whether we're going to be talking about hybrids or the full electric vehicles. I've never really been a fan of those, or like in people, some senses, they'll even say diesels. But the Teslas themselves, they've been around with this current lineup that they have, this full lineup between the Model S, the 3, the Y, the X, the Cybertruck. I think that's a bad idea, but whatever. But between those 4 vehicles, it's been, I want to say, probably about 5 or 6 years. And you get probably about 90, at least by what I hear, maybe like, 90, 95% good, and then maybe 5-10% bad. That really is kind of like, hey, things happen to the cars. You know what I mean? But they continue to have technology breakthroughs, whether it is the automation driving, expanding the range. That's the big deal with them. There's plenty of charging stations out there, but the range is definitely a big thing. That's probably one of the biggest reasons that would steer me away. But at the same point, maybe I would have to kind of look into it and research that a little bit more. But these cars, you figure some of them, they come standard with what? I think it's like 500 horsepower in one here. And the optional upgrade is over 1,000 horsepower. And it's crazy to even think about it. But the range is kind of like, and you keep your range at, like 400, 450 miles, whatever the case may be. So it's good. They can do a lot of crazy stuff with them. So that's why it's on here, because I consider it a niche car, and I'm not usually a fan of those types of vehicles. And the last one on here, the number 1 is going to be something I mentioned earlier. It's a Genesis vehicle, which would be the Genesis G70. That is basically their entry-level car. It's a mid-size sedan. Again, just like I said earlier with the other vehicle, the car is sharp, man. You look at all the pictures and you want to try to find an angle where like the car's ugly, it's not good looking. You look at front, side, back on an angle. The car just looks sharp, you know what I mean? It doesn't look like anything else out there. You can't confuse it with a BMW, a Mercedes, an Audi, a Cadillac. It looks different. Now, you may not necessarily know what you're looking at, but you know what you're not looking at. And it looks different. So now it's a matter of, now I'm curious to follow the car to see what I'm following. The cars come pretty much well packaged. You know what I mean? The basic car itself, without just getting into a base car, 250 horsepower. Again, that's good power. If that's not enough and you need to upgrade, then 365, but that's a hefty upgrade. And even if you needed to upgrade the features, I'd say probably the standard features on it are going to be good for probably about 70 to 80% of the people that buy cars. You know what I mean? You do a minor upgrade to the vehicle, the first upgrade of 2 available upgrades, and it's a matter of sunroof, leather, navigation, and I think there was like one other, and those are the main features. There were other things too, but that was pretty much it though. But yeah, this is the top 10 list of this of top 10 cars that I shouldn't like, but I do. So if you enjoyed the video, if you have any comments, thoughts, you want to add a couple vehicles in here for yourself, just let me know and we'll enjoy that conversation too. Don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe if you liked what you hear. Talk to you soon.